Have you ever really stopped to think about what happens to our minds as we navigate the second half of life? We tend to focus so much on the development of kids and teenagers, but adulthood, well, it's far from being some kind of static endpoint. It's this dynamic, challenging, and honestly fascinating journey all on its own. So today, we're going to explore the key psychological milestones that define middle and late adulthood and really get into the profound changes we all go through.
So, the big question we're tackling today is this: what are the psychological jobs we're supposed to be doing as we get older? And I'm not talking about things like getting a promotion or paying off the mortgage. We're talking about the deep, internal work that truly shapes our sense of who we are and what our life means.
All right, so here's our roadmap. We're going to start with the main challenge of middle age. Then, we'll look at the new demands that pop up during this time. After that, we'll dive into the whole midlife crisis thing, what it is and what it isn't. And finally, we'll move into life's last chapter, the search for integrity and what it actually means to live a meaningful life.
Okay, first up, middle adulthood. We're talking roughly the period between ages 40 and 65. Now, according to the psychologist Erik Erikson, this isn't just a time to kind of settle in. Nope. He saw it as a period defined by a central psychological conflict, a really crucial turning point in how we develop as people.
So the positive way to resolve this conflict is something Erikson called generativity. Basically, this is the drive to look beyond ourselves and our own needs. It's about reaching out to family, to society, to future generations. It's that desire to create or nurture things that will outlast us, like raising kids, mentoring younger people at work, or contributing to your community. It all comes down to a feeling of being needed. And the flip side of generativity? That's stagnation. This is what can happen when a person doesn't find a way to channel that outward drive. They can become really self-absorbed, just preoccupied with their own comfort and their own security, and they start to lose interest in being productive. It's like a psychological turning inward, and it ultimately cuts you off from a huge source of growth and satisfaction. When you see them side by side like this, it's clear these are two totally different ways to live. Generative adults, they tend to be more open, more caring. They have this belief that they can help improve humanity, and that often leads to feeling really satisfied with life. On the other hand, people experiencing stagnation, who put their own comfort first, well, they often feel detached and can become pretty self-indulgent. The key thing to remember here is that this isn't set in stone. It's a mindset that we actively build during this stage of life. Now, this internal battle between generativity and stagnation doesn't just happen in a vacuum, right? It plays out against the backdrop of some very real and often brand new demands in life. So let's take a look at what those actually are. During middle age, our focus really shifts. We start paying a lot more attention to our own health because, let's face it, physical changes are becoming more obvious. We're also deeply invested in how our kids are doing, but at the very same time, we're often starting the huge task of caring for our own aging parents. And for many of us, it's the first time we start thinking seriously about how to use our free time and, planning for retirement. This brings us to a really unique pressure point of this life stage. So many middle-aged adults find themselves stuck right in the middle. They become what we call the sandwich generation. They're often juggling financial, physical, and emotional support for both their kids who are growing up and their parents who are aging. It is a massive balancing act that takes a ton of energy and resilience. Another huge transition is when the kids finally leave home. You've heard the term empty nest, and historically it had this really negative vibe, suggesting a sense of loss, especially for women. But the modern psychological view is actually quite different. For a lot of people, this is a time of renewal, a chance to reconnect with their spouse, pick up new hobbies, and redefine the marriage. It can actually make a relationship much stronger. Okay, so this whole period of shifting priorities and internal questions often leads to what is famously, or maybe infamously, known as the midlife crisis. But what does that term really mean from a psychological point of view? A midlife crisis isn't just about buying a flashy sports car. It's a much deeper period of reevaluation. See, as middle-aged adults start to realize that their youth is finite, that there's actually more time behind them than ahead of them, they can start to question everything: their life choices, their values, all the goals they haven't accomplished yet. It's a profound confrontation with your own life and your own mortality. Psychologists have a couple of main ways of looking at this transition. The older idea, the normative crisis model, basically says it's a fixed part of aging, a crisis you can expect to hit around 40 or 45. But a more modern view, the timing of events model, argues that the trigger isn't your age, but specific things that happen in your life.
In this view, the crisis isn't about turning 40. It's about the moment you start to seriously question your life's path, no matter when that happens.
So as we move past middle age and into late adulthood, we're talking 65 and up, we enter the final psychosocial stage that Erickson identified. And this is a time for looking back and really taking stock of the life you've lived. At the absolute core of this final stage is this one powerful, all-encompassing question. As people approach the end of their lives, they reflect and they ask themselves, did my being here actually matter? And how they answer that question, well, that determines the outcome of this final life crisis. So this final crisis can go one of two ways. The positive outcome is what we call ego integrity. It's that feeling of being whole, complete, and satisfied with your life. It means accepting your entire journey, the good and the bad, and finding meaning in all of it. And that brings a sense of peace. The alternative is despair. That's the feeling that you made the wrong choices, and now it's just too late to fix things. And that can lead to bitterness, regret, and a deep fear of death. So the big question then becomes, how do you get to that sense of integrity? What does it really take to age successfully, from a psychological standpoint? Reaching a state of integrity isn't something that just happens to you. It's active psychological work. It requires a real, conscious effort to come to terms with your life exactly as it was lived. That means accepting the failures just as much as you celebrate the successes, and then fitting all those pieces together into a big picture that lets you feel content. At the end of the day, successful aging is all about adaptation. It's a proactive process. It's about finding ways to minimize the losses that inevitably come with getting older while maximizing the gains in wisdom, in relationships, in perspective. It's about figuring out how to keep thriving, just in a new and different context. And this leaves us with one last, really crucial insight. We tend to think of adulthood as a destination, a plateau you reach after all the chaos of youth. But as we've just seen, it is anything but. It is a continuous, profound journey of psychological growth with its own unique challenges and its own incredible potential for meaning. So the real question isn't just about understanding these stages, but about asking yourself, how are you going to navigate your own journey?